I bet you never put these two ideas together. I was talking to my brother yesterday, and I kind of have to be quiet because it's early morning and it rained a little bit last night, so my usual walk in the woods is now through the neighborhood. So if I have my sultry voice on, just know it's not for any other reason except that I want to respect my neighbors. So my brother and I were talking yesterday, and we were at a birthday party for my daughter and his daughter, and we were talking about how it's kind of crazy, just like the political world right now, how wild things are as far as I feel like I can't look at you in the eye with this thing on. Maybe I just turn it off. I go down like this. Ooh, spooky. Yeah, that's better. We're talking about how crazy the political world is, right? We're talking about how, you have these wild things that Donald Trump is doing. You have, responses from the left, and you have the, crazy rhetoric. Like, what news do you even read? And we were kind of all over this place when it comes to the conversation. It was nice because, there are three kinds of people when it comes to argumentation. There's the people who are so solidified in their ideas they can't be wrong, right? There are people who are so afraid of conflict that they never talk about anything. And then there are the people that hold their ideas loosely enough that they can have a productive conversation. And I really appreciate my brother because, we were in that space where we're like, we definitely could be wrong. We don't have the right answers for any of this. What he said, and I really loved this, he said, it so oftentimes comes down to this like mammalian need for belonging, right? And needing of having someone to fight against. And so red team, blue team, right? That's what it always comes down to, is I have to dislike everything the other side says because I'm on this side. Even though my ideas are more complex, there's more nuance to how I think. When it comes down to it, I just have to vote red or blue, right? So that's kind of the first idea, is like we are always tribalized. We are always in this spot of needing to belong, right? We need to belong to some group. So that's idea number one. Idea number two. This is another conversation I was having with a friend. Shockingly, we were talking about storytelling. And he said this, he says, he was laying out the 4 non-character things that every story needs to have. And he had the question, he says, why does every story have to have conflict? It's like, haha, that is a great question. And I have answers for you. So every great story, every story that you've ever read, worth reading, even like Curious George, right? Like, even those levels of books, they have to have conflict. Conflict is a primary driver in story, because otherwise, why tell the story? Why would you go through the process of telling the story if there is no conflict? There has to be, beginning, conflict, middle, conflict resolution, and conclusion. Like, that's the foundations of a good story, right? You have to have those things. And so he was wondering, he's like, why can't we just have a story without conflict? And this is where we get into the interesting concept of stakes, right? So the stakes have to be high enough for the hero to leave their ordinary world, to leave what is comfortable for them, and enter into the extraordinary. Uh-oh, lost my earbud. That's why we have to have conflict. The hero must be awoken from their stupor and enter into conflict. And so the higher the stakes, typically the more intense the story. And there's an interesting thing that happens too. The stakes for the hero always start individual, and they grow and they grow and they grow until eventually they're life and death for the entirety of the universe or souls or something like that, right? Let's look at Luke Skywalker, for example. It starts with the stakes of, hey, I need to return this droid, right? That's very low stakes, right? I just want to solve the mystery. Then it escalates. Oh, my family's dead, right? Then it escalates again. I have to go save the princess, right? Or she's dead. And then it escalates again. My mentor has been murdered by the worst person in the universe. I have to avenge him. And then it escalates again an entire planet is destroyed. And now we have to stop that from happening across the universe. And you see how the stakes go from that individual to the grand. That's why stakes matter, is because it has to grow with you. It has to entangle you into the story. It has to draw you in, and it has to matter to you and to the hero. Because oftentimes when we are reading or watching or engaging with story, the reason I think the hero's journey is our journey as humans is because 90% of the time we're watching and identifying ourselves as the hero in the story. We're seeing the world as if we were that person. So when the stakes elevate, as the stakes get higher and higher and higher, what is required is an evil enemy that is as great as the reward. So the higher the stakes, the greater the reward, right? The bad guys at the beginning of Star Wars are like the Jawas or whatever, right? Those silly little dudes. But as the stakes increase, the bad guy has to increase with it as well. It's a fundamental truth. The enemy has to get worse as things matter more. So now, hold on to that. Bad guy has to get worse as things matter more. Now look at politics, right? They falsely elevate stakes, right? I'm just saying they, meaning media, meaning your side, the other side, doesn't matter, really. Stakes are elevated by those in power in order for you to create a more demonic version of the person that you don't like, right? So if you are on team A, they have to raise the stakes for what matters for you so high that anyone on team B becomes evil, right? If the stakes are only this small, then they can only be that evil. If the stakes are massive, oh my gosh, people's lives are at risk, right? Again, A, B, doesn't matter which team you're on. I don't care. If they elevate the stakes high enough, then you are forced to care because death is on the line, right? That's why you never mess with a Thethilian. But that's the idea, is you have to understand that the stakes, when they are high enough, gotta get this off. When the stakes are high enough, you will demonize your enemy. And once you realize this about yourself, once you realize that, oh my gosh, I am turning my neighbor, I'm turning my fellow American into a demon, into the highest level of evil, not because necessarily anything they've said, not because anything that they actually truly believe, but simply because the stakes on my side have become apparently elevated. And I would say, in some cases, and probably many cases, those stakes are falsely elevated. And that's a bold statement, right? Because it's going to force you to have some maybe rebellious feelings in this moment where you're like, gosh, well, again, I don't want to get political on this. I guess if we started political. But if you look at the actions of the people across the aisle from you, I think you'll get to this point where you realize, like, they're actually not that bad. They're not like terrible people. They are not the highest evil. You'll start to realize that, you know what? Most people in most parts of America want the most good. They don't want like utility, but they want to have the most good for themselves and for the people who they love. And that doesn't mean that there is not great evil in this world. There is. There are people who have been tainted. There are people who need to be shut down and shown, the full measure of the law. They need to be offered the grace and mercy of Jesus. Like, those things need to happen. But most people are good people. Most people want to help. And so if you realize, like, hey, it's not just the people on my side who are good, it is also the people on both sides who are fundamentally good. Which gets you in a lot of trouble when you start saying those kinds of things. When I say that, instantly your knee-jerk reaction is to say, well, then my thing doesn't matter, right? When there are good people on the other side, my thing doesn't matter because I've lowered the level of evil. So then you have to question, well, are the stakes as high as I thought? That's one. And if they are as high as I thought, then is it the people across from me who are truly evil, or is it something else that I need to fight? And my recommendation, my conclusion is that oftentimes is something else you have to battle. That's a lot for today. Whew. I don't know if you followed me on that one. That was a big idea. Ultimately though, remember, when something matters more to you, you are going to automatically demonize the person across the aisle from you. Period. End of story. You will make them bad to justify your actions. Oy, that's not good. So my recommendation, where you should start and how you can recognize this pattern is if when you feel your heart lifting, you're like, this matters a lot to me. You have to disassociate the person across from you with the idea that is against the thing that you want. Does that make sense? So if I want chocolate cake or my child wants chocolate cake, maybe that's a better example. My child wants chocolate cake deeply. The stakes are high for them. And I say, no, it's 10 p.m. What the hell are you doing out of bed? Get back to bed. Stakes are high for me because I want to go to bed too. My daughter cannot demonize me as the evil one, and I cannot demonize her as the evil one, right? Preventing me from getting what I want, right? Her, in her case, cake, in my case, sleep. I have to see like, this is a good person who wants something different than what I want. How can we work through this together? So, red team, blue team, stakes are high. That is what creates the most amount of political conflict. That's what creates the most amount of conflict in your life. And it's also what makes a really good story. I think that's it for today. Question for you. I think best when I'm moving, but I don't know if this shaky cam is working for you or not. I don't know. You let me know. I mean, there's like 8 of you who watch these at this point. So if you don't like the shaky cam, let me know and maybe I'll get like maybe I can like mount it to my weight vest. No, I'm just rambling. We'll talk soon. Love you guys. Bye.